Welcome to the Ryan Holtz Show. On this show, you can expect the latest, the greatest, and the best curated content on business, marketing, automotive, and lifestyle. Sit back, put in your earplugs, and let's enjoy the ride. Now, as always, I want to make sure you get the best in content that will help you monster your goals, both personally and professionally. I want to keep this conversation going, so please check me out on Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope at Ryan Holtz 1. And then go over to facebook.com/Ryan Holtz Marketing, and we can chat there too. I also want you to visit www.ryanholtz.ca, as this will be where I put my almighty beloved show notes. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am proud to bring you the Ryan Holtz Show. Let the beat drop and enjoy. Great ideas often receive violent opposition from mediocre minds. Albert Einstein said that quote, and we're going to start off the show, episode 3, the Ryan Holtz Show podcast today, with that quote. So I wagered my podcast out. I had 2 episodes loaded up, and over the last 24 hours, I asked for people's feedback, and the feedback has been quite remarkable, actually. And maybe they're just being nice to me because they don't want to hurt my feelings. But either way, I'll take it. So today's title of the show is Being Great or Acting Great. And what I mean by that is, actually, I'm gonna detour to my pal, Mr. Christopher Eubanks, who is out in London, England. And if you don't know who Chris Eubanks is, he's a great boxer. But I kind of think he's a poet, so I would encourage you to Google his name, Chris Eubanks, Eubanks. I was watching a show that he did, just an interview, and the interviewee was basically asking him, you know, Chris, you're great, and you've achieved some amazing things in life. And Chris's response was really what kind of set me off to this interview and really kind of opened up my eyes and changed my perspective. Because Chris said, I'm not great. He said, that's just merely a perception or an illusion. He said, he actually said, I've met great people before and I'm not great. So the interviewee was kind of taken back by it and honestly didn't really know where to go with that question or that statement. And I don't blame him, because when somebody who is great, who you think is great, says they're not great, but not saying in a way that they almost want to get more compliments, but say in a way that is like legitimately they don't feel that they're great. It's different. So Chris basically said, being great or acting great. He said, I'm not truly a great person. He said, I have become a professional at acting great. Now this takes a whole spin into speakers like Tony Robbins or any motivational speaker out there who talks to people who maybe are in doubt of their own, in doubt of their own skill set, and basically tries to motivate them to get them to be self-aware and see their true potential. So it was really interesting. So Chris Eubanks said, I have become an absolute practitioner at being and acting great, but I'm not authentically great. So here's my question to you folks who's listening right now. Are you great? Are you born great? Is this a trait that you're born with? Or is this something that you learn and cultivate, grow, hone, and skill, hone in on throughout the course of your life? Because I'd have to ask you, is there a difference between being great and acting great? I don't know that there is a skill. I don't know that there is a separation between that. But I think that it's worth the question. So why have I chose to make a whole show around being great or acting great today? And I think that leading into this podcast, leading into further episodes, a lot of it's going to have to do with psychology and more self-awareness with what you're actually thinking inside your brain. And again, in my intro podcast episode, I did mention, I want this show to be a little bit of my brain child to your brain child. And some of the direct messages I've got and received off the first 2 episodes, just people's perspectives, wow. And thank you so much. I'm going to give a shout out to Beverly Teresa on Twitter, Andre Lindo on Instagram, Aaron Sarabane, Tycoon Events, Michelle, Nora, Adrian, all these people who have been very, very receptive and taking time to give me feedback. Thank you so much for that. But back to the matter at hand. My opinion on this, and again, this isn't the Holy Grail, this is just my opinion, is I don't think you're just great. I think great is something that you practice like you would go on a diet, like you would, develop an exercise plan. I think greatness is a very broad term for hard ass work and hustle. And, people who know me closely, but people who don't, I come from very, very humble beginnings. And it taught me a very, very aggressive work ethic at a very young age. And I literally just said, if I want something, I got to work for it. So I never had a sense of entitlement, and I never felt that anything should just be handed to me. And, the one thing I did feel entitled to was that if I put in the hard, honest work, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to get to my goal. Maybe not, but I feel that it's at least going to get me in that right direction. And I'm not necessarily looking for the goal, but I'm looking for the journey in the right direction to that goal, if that makes sense. And I always like to say, do not confuse movement with progress. People are moving back, people are moving side to side, laterally, but you really got to be moving forward. And, going back into the work ethic, with hard work, determination, focus, and yes, a little bit of a plan, because you want to make sure that you're not working against yourself, you can achieve anything in this world. Even this podcast, this is going to be kind of like my little brainchild. I've been blogging, I'm on social media. I go all around and speak. I have clients, but I really didn't have a brainchild. That's just something that I'm going to talk into, something that's going to be recorded, and something that I can go back and refer to. But furthermore, something that's going to put, a piece of content or a piece of just a little piece of my brain out there to get skepticized a little bit by the general public, and that's what I want this podcast to do. So, being great or acting great, I think being great is a skill that you will work towards. I think being great is a culmination of several things. I think professionalism. I think humility. I think empathy is a huge attribute and characteristic of somebody who's great. I think that almost small business mentality kicks in, where even if you become a massively large business, you still always see yourself as that small person starting out. But I think there's so many benefits to that, because you never really get, it never gets to your head. You stay humble, you stay grounded, and you always remember the principles and the specific things that actually got you to where you are currently. And I think that everybody who is in business has to always remember that, because business is truly, I think owning a business is truly one of the hardest things you can ever do in the world. But it just so happens that it's also one of the most rewarding things you can do in the world. So when I wake up in the mornings, I want to be great. That is my aspiration. I want to be great. I don't want to be great because I want people to tell me I'm great. I want to be great because I feel that the only person I'm working against is myself. And I think I am my own competition. So if I feel that I put in a good effort and I'm working towards that greatness, then I feel good, which ultimately is going to set the tone for pretty much everything. So I do want to be great, and I want to be my version of great. Do I act great? I don't know that I act great. I think being transparent, I think being raw, very sobering is extremely important in this game. And, I'm going to segue into some really harsh opinions. But this is what the show is about again. Because in my industry, you see all kinds of, quote unquote marketers. You see all kinds of quote unquote entrepreneurs, all kinds of quote unquote, let's go for coffee. I want to pick your brain. And I always say, if me and you develop a relationship and we literally meet, whether it's through social media or it's offline, and the first thing I do is I ask you for something, we're not off to a good start. We're just not. I got to build some value before I start asking for things. and I feel that should be returned to me. I want value built, and I think value is everything. I understand why people do go in for the ask on the first, date, so to speak. Maybe that's all they know. Maybe that's, they want to get to their goals or they want to do that. But I think that, with social media, we're in the trust cycle. It's kind of an introduction to say, do I want to take this relationship to the next step professionally? Okay. So, being great or acting great? Is there a difference? I want to know. Again, chime in, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, at Ryan Holtz 1, with the hashtag, the Ryan Holtz Podcast Show, whichever works for you, and tell me, being great or acting great, is there a difference? I really want to know this, and I will touch on it later in the show, on the next show, I should say, okay? So, Chris Eubanks, phenomenal boxer. Eric Thomas says, average skill, phenomenal will. And, the person that wakes up, and the person that's moving hard and in pursuit, I really think they always win. I think that having book smarts, or intellectuality or a massive brain with a lot of information in it is really, really important. But I also think that a person who's resourceful could even be more important, because I don't need you to know everything, but I need you to know that when we're in a situation that you know where to go and find the answer at that particular situation. And everybody who's been living on this planet for a little while knows that life does not serve you challenge when it's convenient for you. Usually the challenge comes when it's like not convenient for you. It's like serendipity. It's like weird, you start feeling weird about things. So being great or acting great. Here's how I think we can find out whether somebody's being great or acting great. Just simply pay attention to their actions. Pay attention to some of the things that they do every day. When somebody tells you, hey, I'm, waking up, I'm going for a run, and, I just finished this book before I went to bed, and, I'm going to go do some volunteering. And they start saying all these kind of little things to you, and you find that this person, every time you talk to them, they seem to be doing all these same little things, and they're being consistent with it. For me, I start to get that little creepness of greatness coming into my brain, because I now know that I'm in front of somebody or associating with somebody who's really remarkable. I have so much respect for people who go out and fail, if that makes sense. They don't always have to succeed, but just literally going out and failing and making that jump. I sometimes think the fail's better than the win, because I think the fail teaches you so much more, and you get this coat of thick skin and armor and strength that the win is just around the corner, but the fail's what's actually going to give you the direction, if that makes sense. And I think failing is so important. I think everybody needs to fall flat on their face to really hone in on the humility aspect of why the heck they failed. Because again, I think the fail is the direction sign to where the win street's going to be. So again, the fail is the direction to where the win street's going to be. So being great or acting great. Again, I think that this is a huge debate. I've read several books. One of the most recent books is a book called Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. I'm sure many of you have read that book. You should get that book. I think it's very interesting, just the way, everything kind of unfolds into it, because they're basically saying, Ryan in the book was basically saying that, listen, ego is the enemy. And if you think that, to be quite honest, your poo-poo doesn't stink, maybe you really got to look at yourself again. So this world's full of people who are trying to achieve their dreams. It's full of, social media has put like an X-ray / ultrasound machine on the world, meaning we've never had access to people's lives in the way that we do now. Even if I don't see somebody for months and months and months, if I'm on their social media, I feel like I'm kind of living their life with them. I'm literally one unlocked screen away from their life and what's going on. And I think that's, extremely, extremely cool. but we know that that's also risky. And I mean, there's lots of psychological studies that have said, hey, social media sometimes can really start to harm people in the sense of their motivation, their outlook, almost borderline, putting them into depression. So I think these are all things that have to be taken into consideration. So being great or acting great, there's so many cool people, even here in Edmonton, who are they're doing everything. They're doing it all, and they're doing it really, really well. And I'm looking forward to interviewing some of them on the next coming shows down the road. But again, Chris Eubanks says, do we ever get to that greatness? And there's another quote, and I'm a big quote person because I think that they resonate. But the best quote that I love is, get paid to be yourself. And when you show up to that job and you're kind of an employee number and you're getting paid based on a 0.7 or a 0.5 or unionized and all these things, the people out there that are doing really cool things, they're literally getting paid to be themselves. And only when you're yourself do I think you'll ever meet that true potential, and you'll see the world just start opening up because you are literally bringing something different to the table than me or the next person in line. So again, I'd like you to respond back to me. And are you getting paid to be yourself? That's the next question. Let me know. Chime in, okay? This show is going to be a little bit brief because this is just kind of a mind thought that I had. I wanted to discuss it. I think it's cool. So to do a little bit of a recap on the show, I would love for you to reach out to me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat at Ryan Holtz 1, or reach out to me on Facebook, or you can email info@ryanholtz.ca and let me know if there's a difference between acting great or being great. And also, I would love to know your opinions on some topics that you'd love me to cover and some people that you think would be an awesome guest on the show to have a real cool back and forth conversation with, okay? No outro on this show. I'm going to keep it real authentic. Today is a great day. It's a little overcasted. I can smell that snow coming. I'm wishing you all an amazing week ahead. But for now, let the beat drop. Boom.